Hi, I'm Will. Hey, I'm Will. Hi, I'm Will. I'm Will. And this is Backyard Outdoors. And welcome to Backyard Outdoors. And this is Backyard Outdoors. And I'm Will. And this is Backyard Outdoors. Hi, this is Will, and welcome to Backyard Outdoors. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about canoeing and what you have to do to go canoeing. And one of the big things you need for a canoe is canoe paddles. Now we're going to talk about different types of paddles and how to take care of them. Your first type of paddle is this one, like this one here. It's a composite plastic aluminum paddle. It's very light, very durable, and they're very good, but they're somewhat cashy. They can run anywhere from $25 to $100 for one of these little dandies. And the good thing about them is you really never have to do anything with them. You don't have to treat them, you don't have to take care of them, you can just, use them and then put them away. But the other downside is if you dump your boat or your raft or something to that effect and you lose it, you're out quite a bit of cash. The next type of paddle you can get is the Walmart big box store ones. You can get them for anywhere from $10 to $30, and they're good paddles, and they're cheap paddles, and if that's what you need to get out, then that's what you do. They're laminated. I don't own one because they're too cheap for me. I don't really care for them. They tend to break. They're not all that durable. The last other type of paddles, the ones I like, and these are the custom-made wood paddles. There's also a composite full plastic paddle, which are good too, but I don't own any of those either because the problem with them is in heavy water, like with a lot of current or rapids, they bend when you use them. They don't break. You don't have to mess with them. You can just put them away, and they're not all that expensive, but they're not really good in heavy water. But the wood paddle are the ones I like the best of all. They're a good paddle, and they're very durable, they're very light. These are all custom made, and they can run you anywhere from $40 to $100 depending on what type and how big you need. The deal with a custom paddle is it has to be made to specific specifications. It has to be made to you. For instance, I'm 6'6", and when I put my arm out, it goes from right at the top of my hand down to the ground. That's how long your paddle needs to be, and that's you from standing up. And that's how long your paddle needs to be to fit you. Now, you don't have to get them exactly to fit you. I've got more than a few that do not fit me, and they work fine. So it's up to you. But this type of paddle, the style is called the Voyager paddle. It's a narrow-bladed paddle, but it gets you a good thrust, and it gets you right through there real good. And it's really good if you're in a gang boat where there's more than, a couple of you, like there's 5 or 6 of you, and you're all sitting behind each other. And that way you can paddle real close together to each other and not worry about hitting the blades too much. And it does real good. Basic anatomy of a paddle. Let's go with something a little smaller, that way we can see it better. Is my beaver tail paddle. The basic anatomy of a paddle is, the technical terms are the grip, the loom, the throat, the blade, the tip. Or as most of us call it, the handle, the shaft, the blade, and we don't care about the tip. But that's the basic anatomy of a paddle. Now this one is a very light, what they call the beaver tail. It's got more of a, shaped like a beaver. Anyway, there's that paddle. I told you about the Voyager paddle. These are basically canoeing paddles. These are really nice, and you can get in and do whatever you have to, and there's 2 or 3 of you in a boat. You don't have to worry about banging paddles. That's what the Voyager paddle is about. And then there's what they call the Columbia River paddle. Now this paddle is real heavy through the shaft or the loom, and got a big grip on it, but the blade is kind of narrow, but it's real thick. And the reason for it is you can use it as a paddle or to pull with. If you have to get down in the mud or the gravel or the dirt, you can push off on it, and it won't break, and it's very durable. And they call them Columbia River paddle or the Canoe or the Lewis and Clark paddle. This is what they think Lewis and Clark used when they got out west. Now, the downside of custom wood paddles is you have to take care of them. And these are kind of rough. I know if you haven't looked or can't see it, you'll notice these have been used, because I use my paddles quite a bit. I canoe pretty extensively. And the thing is I also store these paddles inside my home as decorations. So they hang up around the upper part of my walls in my living room and my entry room as part of the decoration for our home. And then when I need them, I get them down and use them. But as a result, throughout the winter, you have to take them down a couple of times a year, and you have to oil them. And the reason you oil them is to keep them from getting dry rot, to keep them moist. That way they don't break. They don't get dried out and they don't break. That's the downside of these wooden paddles. But it really doesn't take that much to deal with it. What you're going to need is some steel wool. You have to take the steel wool, you have to take the steel wool, and you get the steel wool out, and you take your paddle. Now this one's been sitting up there for a while, and it's a little bit dried out. And what you do is you basically take the steel wool, and you just give it a nice rubbing down. And the thing is when you rub it down, you'll clean off all the dirt and the dust and the mud and any splinters that you look over the paddle, and you can look it over. And I would suggest doing this at the end of your season, and that way you can clean all the mud and stuff off of it with the steel wool, or like I said, trim the splinters off of it, maybe even run a little bit of a light sandpaper over it to try to get all the splinters out of it, because you don't want them catching you next year. And you just basically work it all the way up the loom, and even the grip. Just like I said, clean all the mud off of it, just rub it down nice and light with some steel wool. It helps out, and it helps opens up that wood a little bit for when you're going to oil it. Now you can use different types of oil, but you can use boiled linseed oil or whatever, which is what you usually use on a paddle when you first get it. When you first get your paddle, when you custom order these, and you can custom order one of these from Spoon River Pirate Paddle Works. He's online. You can go on Facebook and go on the like page, and he's right there. Real nice guy. And there's a couple of others. And when you first get it, you can order these unfinished if you want. That way you can finish them up. But you have to rub them down real good with boiled linseed oil, and then you can varnish them or stain them or whatever you want to do. I don't really get too much into that because I use mine quite a bit. And frankly, varnish never helped anything. Helps waterproof them a little bit. Once you got it rubbed down with steel wool, you just get yourself an old rag. And the oil I use, and like I said, you can use lots of different oils, but the oil I use is plain old virgin olive oil. Now the thing is, I get the cheapest stuff I can find. I don't spare any expense. I get whatever I can find that's really cheap, like at Aldi's or some grocery store or a big box store, anywhere. I'll get the cheapest kind I can find, and I'll open that little baby up, and you just pour some on the rag. Don't pour it direct on the paddle because it'll run everywhere. So you just pour a little bit on the rag, like that. And then you just start, rubbing it down nice and easy like that. And you'll see it go in there. And if it, you just want to rub it in there real good, and don't spare it. Rub it in there heavy. Get down there on that tip where you've been pushing out from the banks and stuff, because you're trying to get it back into its original shape, or not actually original shape, but in the shape that it's in, for use. You don't want it to dry out, is what you're after. If you got any places where you're taking splinters off, really get that oil in there also. Get it all the way over, all over everything. Get it up there and get it on that shaft. And like I said, put a couple coats on it. You'll see it soak in. And basically put it on until you don't see it soak in anymore. When it quits soaking in and you start getting a nice light sheen of oil on the outside of your paddle, stop. Because it's took all the oil it's going to take. And what you've done is you basically, oiled it back up and got it ready for again. And I suggest that you probably should do this, 2-3 times a year regardless. Especially if you store them inside. Because they will dry out, and if they dry out, they get brittle, and then they break, and then you'll have a nice piece of really expensive firewood kindling. Now you see how that's got that nice sheen to it? It's got a nice oily sheen to it, and that's what you really want. You should do this to all your paddles, including your Columbia River paddle, the one you're abusive to the most, because it really takes a lot of beating, and you don't want it to dry out at all, because you're going to be using this one to push off the bottom. This type of paddle here works really, really good in these shallow rivers, like here in the Midwest or even out west, in some of the rocky bottom ones. This one works really, really good when you're on the mud bottoms, and you can really push off the mud bottoms with this, or off the logs, or any other thing. And the beauty of it is it's very, very durable. This paddle goes with me. I usually have 3 paddles in the boat. I usually the one my wife carries or uses, or mostly it just sits in her lap. There's the one I use, and then there's the one that this one sits back by me, so I got something in case I want I need it, I can push off with this one. Like if we're stuck or hooked up on a log jam or whatever, that way I put this one down, don't have to worry about breaking it, because this one's a little flimsier than the other one. And this one I can really get in there and really just push off good with it. But anyway, that's pretty much the care of your paddles. And we're going to be talking about different canoeing styles all here this spring, and really get everybody ready for canoeing. But that's pretty much what you got to do to take care of your paddles. And hey, I hope this helps out. I'm Will, and this is Backyard Outdoors.